welcome back to Data Center News Asia. This week we're going through the latest groundbreaking from Colt in Inzai. There's another new player in India. Keppel and Woodside are looking at some exciting H2 import projects. And there's some news, positive news from the cloud sales market. Google and Microsoft shares seem to be bouncing. This week I am joined by Adam Gibson, all things to all men data centers in Australia. From Monaco. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well. Monaco is very pretty at the moment, and there's been a lot of interest and a lot of DC people here. So it's great to be here and see some fellow friends in the industry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you for some proof that you are in Monaco because you've just got this very sheen white background behind you. But I was hoping for the Casino Royale or something like that.
Well, I can confirm, and if you check on LinkedIn, there's quite a few people tagging me in and things like that. And look, if Formula One is happening, and I see the barriers. So that's as much information I can give you at this point without actually sending selfies.
Excellent. So would you rate Data Cloud ahead of PTC, or which is the bigger global event? Would you say?
Oh, that's a very tough call. I mean, obviously PTC is predominantly telecommunications and has a benefit for multiple carrier functions. Less vendors, which is good and bad depending on where you are in the DC space. The data cloud, I guess the broad group, how they've designed it is vendors, being, all the wonderful electrical, mechanical, fire suppression, security companies coming together in groups. They've got one in the US, one in Monaco. I know they've got some stuff in the Nordics as well to meet with the other DC people, because we know, and as we talk about later on, there's some expansion, not just in Australia or New Zealand, which are regions that have always been slowly growing, or new extensions, but businesses as Google, as we mentioned, they're buying the shares back to invest because there's a massive growth. So how do these vendors come together to know what's going on in the industry and spend time with their partners and with people that want to know more about their products?
Well, you've summed it up very well. I could almost think you haven't spent the entire week at the casinos. I'm just jealous, of course, because I'm still in the office here in Singapore. But let's dive into the news so you can catch your flight back to Australia. So
Perfect.
The first story this week is Colt. This is the site that they've called Inzai 4, imaginatively named.
Yes.
It's 600 meters across the road from the three sites that they've already built, and I think this is the second development since they announced the JV between Mitsui and Fidelity for the hyperscale expansions. Yeah. So what have you seen about this one, Adam?
Look, 20 megawatts is a good stepping point. With having multiple sites, they've created a campus, and I think that Colt are doing a lot of things around the world now that they've thought about how we can keep the business afloat. And with a 20 megawatt chunk, carved into Japan, which is an evolving market and an exciting market, especially in Inzai, which is that new area of Japan that's become a DC focus point. So I'm very excited, and obviously with that JV, I think they're creating great headroom to work with people in APAC to expand the demand that is there.
Absolutely. Inzai is pretty crazy. I was just having a look on the DC Bike platform earlier, and my colleague Nominal is actually going out in a couple of months for one of the events in Japan. You need to do some tours because you've got, in between these Colt sites, you've got the two MC Digital Realty sites. There's AWS, Equinix, Google, STT Stack, GLP, at Tokyo, AirTrunk. There's a new Goodman development. I think I've missed off some of the local Japanese players as well, like the Internet Initiative, and it's a crazy little area there that they've got. It must be the capacity of most cities.
Absolutely, and you look at the people like we use AirTrunk for example, who've come in unaware of the industry and they're dropping 300 plus megawatts. That's a ginormous amount of capacity that's going into that market. So obviously there's demand, and we can see it with the other providers like Colt, who are expanding not just a second site but a third and now a fourth. There's obviously demand in this region. I think there's going to be a situation like Singapore where there's going to be a power restraint at some point in time, but at this current juncture, people are exciting, people are expanding, and it's good for the market in APAC for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, this is a 20 megawatt site, brings the campus for Colt up to 70 megawatts there. So congratulations to the team. The second story I wanted to talk about, so I mentioned there's a new player in India. Now, this is the real estate fund. I've written the acronym down wrong. What's the name of the company?
RMZ Corp, I think it is, from what I was reading the other day. Um, they're obviously planning to venture into a new asset class. I think it might be two or three new asset classes as its division, its vision to develop, and that's obviously a lot of RM, remits and that play of business getting into that space, being an Indian business, and supporting that is fantastic. We know that there's quite a few prominent players in India, and there's a lot more coming in. There's a new region in the DC space. So when you look at someone working together to create a new asset class, expanding into it, they already have millions and millions of square feet around. I think it was something like, it might have been almost 4 million square feet across a couple of areas, and they're developing another 1.5 million square feet in Mumbai. That is phenomenal amount of space. And to complement their vision, it's amazing. I'm excited to see what they're going to be like in a couple of years once they've got customers and the teams and things like that, and where regions they're going to expand out from once they've got their core position from India covered off.
Yes, as you say, this is a local Indian real estate developer. They actually raised cash for this themselves by an asset sale to Brookfield, it looks like, a couple of years ago. So this was $2 billion they raised,
Yeah,
selling a number of different sites to Brookfield. And yeah, it's a mixture of logistics, not 100% data centers, of course, but probably similar to
no,
what we see from companies. A lot of these logistics players, I mean, Goodman just mentioned there in Japan, but ESR, Logos, these kind of logistics players getting into data centers, similar sort of development process. And yeah, as you say, the locations are all the ones that we usually tick off for India as well. I think the first development you mentioned there is going to be Hyderabad, which is a red hot market. So yeah,
yeah,
exciting news. More players in India, but I think if there's
yeah.
any country that can support it, it's the most populous country in the world.
Absolutely, and I think the diversification is what that region needs more than anything else. Having that separation of different products, which means that the biggest issue you're going to see when you mention the population is getting jobs for these people. Data centers generate some sort of job security from the technology supporting it, but the DCs don't do it. If you've got a business that has multiple facets or multiple regions or departments and things like that to expand upon, they're going to be very important for the governments to support them and grow with them, because the staffing requirements is going to be fantastic for that region.
Yeah. Well, I think the canned response, of course, data centers don't generate a vast number of jobs as an actual project, but I suppose it's more of that digital realty, data gravity kind of concept where we're looking at, what does the access to data centers in the region, what does that infrastructure enable? And that's obviously something for India that's very important, is to be a digitally enabled population in the future.
Absolutely.
Now, this is something, I guess, partially in my backyard, partially in your backyard, Adam. This is a Singapore-Australia collaboration here. So
Yep.
Keppel and Woodside have signed an initial non-binding agreement to import hydrogen from, this is from the H2 Perth project that Woodside has been
Hmm.
touting, and it's set
Yes.
to power Keppel's data center projects, more specifically the Data Park Plus floating campus.
I'm very excited to see how this is going to turn out. Obviously, hydrogen is, we'll say, relatively new, and trying to use that especially in a liquid nitrogen form, where they're going to ship it each day from Perth up to Singapore, and support that business itself. They were saying it's something like results in, was it 1,000 tons of liquid nitrogen being shipped, something like that, and that's a ginormous amount of capacity and logistics, let alone the energy function that is going to turn into a potential high sustainable operation. I'm very excited to see what's going to turn out, you know, from this product to other facilities. Keppel being a multiple, faceted business from their subsea and their DC business. Going to that next step of how do we become more sustainable and become more important to that region, such as Singapore, which we've spoken about before, is got some power restraints, and obviously Australia wants to capitalize on its resources to support these regions, but will have its, I guess, a green factor that needs to come into it, just like everywhere else in the world. So I'm
Hmm.
really, really wanting to see how the supply chain works from Australia to Singapore. Obviously there was mention I was reading before about Osaka Gas will look like to join the study to investigate options to extend into the hydrogen shipping to Japan as well. So as we literally just spoke about, Japan growing so much, are those data centers going to come hydrogen as well? So this might become a very nice, foundation play for Keppel and their partnership to, become a real energy, supporter in that sustainability function.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of ways you could look at it. You say hydrogen's very new. With my well-known hydrogen skeptic hat on, I'd look at this and say, well, Woodside are a gas company. This project is blue hydrogen slash green, and blue, for those who are not into their hydrogen, is reformed from natural gas, and then the carbon is sequestered. Green hydrogen is electrolyzed from renewable sources. There's no commitment on what the mixture of that is, so we may just be buying very expensive gas. But if I were to steel man it and look at it from the positive perspective, it's good to see, I guess, Singapore government via Keppel doing this sort of research and doing these studies, because it may not be financially viable for others to do it. And as you say, there is a problem here that needs solving, and this is one potential avenue for it. I think that was very diplomatic of me. Before we get too far into the into being energy nerds, I think let's go back to the final story I've got, which is this is the news that Microsoft and Google have both had a good week in the earnings, slightly beating their forecasts. We did talk a few weeks ago actually that OVH share price had tanked on it, but what I'm looking at as the headline here is all of these cloud companies, whatever you compare to their forecasts, we're looking at 25, or Microsoft's case, 27% growth year on year. Google have just turned a profit from making a huge loss on their cloud. OVH, 22%. So these are still, despite the doom and gloom chat in the sector, these are still big year-on-year growth that in any other sector would be a huge win.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that people and even the financial people know, that there is a doom and gloom component, and they've got to be careful that they don't overpromise and underdeliver. So, the numbers that are positive is great, but the numbers that they're delivering and actually improving is staggering. Like that 28%, it was something like, I think I saw, was it $7 billion USD? When that 28% was equaling 7 billion. Like that's a staggering number for a cloud business. And we know that everyone is still moving into the cloud in some capacity. There's people moving out and managing in different ways. And look, at the end of the day, the data centers are still the winners in all of this. So, as the megawatts increase in load for the cloud providers, so too are the data centers. So it goes hand in hand. And I know that everyone's now getting more excited about storing their data and able to take 20 photos of something compared to the one. And as that is increasing and they're storing it virtually, the cloud providers are going, yep, we'll keep supporting that. And prices are decreasing in storage capacity and things like that, which means that people are holding it for longer. So it's not surprising that the revenue is up. I'm just surprised that the numbers are, in the multiples being 20 plus, year on year. That's a fantastic, I guess, result for Alphabet, and the rest of the team, with Google, or Alphabet being Google, but the rest of Facebook or Meta and everyone else looking at going, what else can we do? How can we, evolve more? And they're going, well, it's working. The proof's in the pudding here, and having that buyback, is good to see.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, AWS weren't part of this headline, but it's hard to keep away from them as the biggest player in the space. But it's easy to forget when you look at the Amazon every quarter. It might be a relatively small share of their revenue, as Amazon, the biggest company in the world. Or actually, I may be wrong. I haven't checked with Tesla today. But AWS is something like 74-75% of the profitable part of it, and it's a new part of their business relative to the whole company. So the growth story there is just phenomenal. And it's hard to get into the details sometimes on these reports, but the growth and the market share is just phenomenal.
We just got to be wary too. They're looking at doing job cuts and things like that. And hopefully with this skyrocketing report of the return that they're getting, they can keep some of the jobs and keep evolving the businesses, because that's the biggest concern too. Is they had to be careful with the money they're losing, or that they were potentially thinking about dropping off due to change, that they had to, people were going to lose their jobs and look at alternatives. But hopefully this is enough bolstering to say that, big businesses don't cut tens of thousands of, jobs or, regions or departments getting cut off the project. So let's see how this, continues on for the next couple of months, and let's see that people continue evolving and improving with these businesses to make them grow and make the rest of the economy supporting that going very well.
Absolutely. Well, we've just hit the LinkedIn 15-minute video limit, so I'm not sure. I'll probably cut out some of my pauses in the middle. But Adam, it was really good to have you on. I don't mind running over a little bit because it was, it was an enjoyable chat and some good insights from you. Hopefully, we can get you on when you're back on this side of the world sometime. Maybe if you're in Singapore, you can appear with James as well, and we can do a little roundtable.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you for your time, guys.